Hello, everyone. My name is Jamal Lewis with Rewiring America. We are going to get started shortly, but just to give a few logistics. We have the Q&A box, so any questions that you have for our panelists today, feel free to put that in the Q&A box. We have an action-packed schedule today, so thank you all for joining us. And I will kick it to our moderator, Wes Gobar from Evergreen Action.
Thank you so much, Jamal. And thank you all for joining us here today. My name is Wes Gobar. I'm the coalition's lead for Evergreen Action, and we've gathered an amazing set of speakers here today to discuss the path to energy security and why it must come from investing in clean energy. The choice before our nation is simple. America can become a global leader in the clean energy future that we help build, or we can remain beholden to the fossil fuel interests of the past. As we speak, Russia's petrostate dictatorship is conducting a 20th century style invasion of Ukraine. This invasion has inflicted immeasurable suffering on the Ukrainian people and has caused energy prices to skyrocket across the globe. President Biden and Senate leaders have an opportunity to respond to the crisis by ensuring the 21st century is one built on American leadership through affordable clean energy. And yet, the very same multinational fossil fuel interests propping up Putin's regime are calling on us to double down and respond with 20th century tactics by investing more in oil and gas. The facts of the matter are clear. Oil and gas are vital to Putin's regime, and investing in oil and gas will do absolutely nothing to curb the influence of petrostates like Russia because they're global commodities. There are no shortcuts to national security. Clean energy is the only real path to energy independence. If we manufacture solutions like wind and solar at home, no other country can tell us when the sun can shine or the wind can blow. And when we build materials like batteries and wind turbines and heat pumps, we can send them to our allies abroad to break the influence of fossil fuel conflict as well. There are $555 billion in climate investments recorded across the entire Democratic caucus and simply sitting on the Senate's docket. It's past time to send those climate provisions to President Biden's desk. When we talk about pain at the pump, but we also don't often talk about the pain millions of families feel paying utility bills each month. And so those climate investments can save them hundreds of dollars each year and protect them from the volatility of the oil and gas market. It's time to combat the climate crisis, to make our homes, our schools, and our communities healthier, more cost-effective, and more resilient to climate-driven extreme weather events, combating the climate crisis. And combating the climate crisis isn't just a moral issue. It's a matter of ensuring peace and stability across the globe. Climate disasters are already costing the world hundreds of billions of dollars each year. And the Department of Defense has already authored multiple reports documenting how much climate is a conflict multiplier. And we saw that as Syria's drought ballooned into the Syrian civil war. And so investments in 20th century solutions like fossil fuels are an investment in a 21st century filled with war and conflict. We're in a moment that demands real leadership. And that's why I'm thankful to be here with congressional leaders like Senator Martin Heinrich and Representative Kathy Castor, who have taken the initiative to co-chair the bicameral Congressional Electrification Caucus. And now we're counting on President Biden and Senator Schumer to demonstrate the leadership we all need by immediately passing major climate investments. And now I'll introduce our great speakers for the day. We have US Senator Martin Heinrich from New Mexico, and he's the founder and co-chair of the Electrification Caucus. Senator Heinrich serves on the Senate Energy and National Resources, Appropriations, Intelligence, and Joint Economic Committees. We have US Representative Kathy Castor, who is Tampa Bay's voice in Congress and co-chair and founder of the Electrification Caucus, and committed to building a stronger economy that works for everyone as a member of the Energy and Commerce Committee and chair of the Select Committee on the Climate Crisis. Timothy Hade is a co-founder and chief operating officer at Scale Microgrid Solutions, where he focuses on sustainable distributed generation technologies to serve mission-critical facilities. Laklesha Lloyd is a US Army veteran who served from 2001 to 2010. She's the climate justice organizer with Common Defense. She currently resides in Charleston, West Virginia. Ari Matusiak is the CEO of Rewiring America, and he's the co-founder and managing partner of Purpose Venture Group, a social impact incubator building ventures to address climate and economic inequality. And now I'll pass it over to Senator Heinrich to start us off with remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Wes, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Banning the import of Russian oil and gas, which directly fuels the unjustified war atrocities that we're seeing in Ukraine, was absolutely the right thing to do. But this whole scenario has really demonstrated just how dangerous, just how costly our dependence on fossil fuels has become. This dependence empowers Putin, and it props up other malign foreign regimes in oil-producing countries like Venezuela and Iran. There are short-term relief measures that the administration can take to ease the energy burden of American families. And I strongly believe that we should do all we can to protect American households from the burden brought on by Vladimir Putin's global price hike on energy. But if it wasn't clear before, then it is now painfully obvious that true energy independence requires breaking our nation's cycle of fossil fuel dependence. And we need to be clear that the right answer to lowering energy prices for Americans and our allies is not drill, baby, drill. That is never going to address the root of this challenge. We need to quite literally focus our energy on clean alternatives to fossil fuels if we ever want to break away from this paradigm. In addition to scaling up our clean energy production, that means dramatically ramping up our production of clean, electric, and fossil-free, fuel-free vehicles and machines, or as I like to call this, Electrify for peace. As one of the founding members of the Electrification Caucus in Congress, I've been leading the call to scale up our manufacturing and adoption of electric appliances like heat pumps. These appliances save families money on their energy bills, are dramatically cleaner to run, and most importantly to this particular discussion, they do not rely on any hydrocarbons like oil or fossil gas. And they can play a key role in helping our European allies break off their current overdependence on Russian oil and fossil gas that is helping Putin finance his war in Ukraine. There are currently 76 million homes in Europe, if you include the United Kingdom, that rely on gas for heating. That is a major source of leverage for Vladimir Putin. But there are existing technologies that are right off the shelf today and policy tools at our disposal that we should deploy to significantly aid in electrifying all those homes. And our first priority should be accelerating the replacement of all the Russian gas-powered furnaces with electric heat pumps. We can place a significant procurement order by the U.S. Department of Defense, utilize loan program office capacity, and invoke the Defense Production Act to pump out heat pumps to electrify European homes. And while we're at it, we should scale up our installation of electric and fossil fuel-free appliances here at home. We need to pass the rebates for these appliances that are in our Zero Emissions Homes Act. These rebates will help families with the upfront costs of installing these appliances. Heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, induction stoves, which create major savings on monthly utility bills and wean us off those fossil fuels. And we need to get the Senate back to the table to pass necessary and substantial investments in clean energy generation, in transmission, and in home and vehicle electrification. We can't waste this opportunity. That's right here for us to be able to seize, ramping up our deployment of clean energy and our adoption of fossil fuel-free appliances is a national security issue, and it has become a global security imperative. We need to act on climate, and we need to electrify for peace. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Congresswoman Kathy Castor from Florida, and thank you for bringing us all together today. It's great to be with my good friend, Senator Heinrich, especially. I want to start by saying that our hearts are with the people in Ukraine. We just came from hearing directly from President Zelensky, and he was inspiring as usual. One of the things he did at the outset is he thanked the American people, President Biden, and the Congress for the support that we've provided to Ukraine so far. And that includes banning Russian energy exports to the United States. We will hold Putin accountable for the harm he is inflicting to the people of Ukraine, but the innocent people across the world, many are caught up in the spin-off impacts from Putin's war of aggression. Gas prices here in America have gone up 75 cents since Putin invaded Ukraine. And people are awake now more than ever before to the world's dependence upon fossil fuel and the risk that poses to our economic security, no matter where you live. In America, decades of the same old policies have left us more at risk economically and strategically, allowing despots like Vladimir Putin to wield energy supplies as a weapon. And those volatile costs are being passed along to hardworking Americans who are facing skyrocketing prices at the pump. Because oil and gas is helping to fund Putin's attack on Ukraine, on the Ukrainian people, the Germans and the Europeans nixed the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. They intend to go in a clean energy direction. And then the US, of course, we ended the import of Russian energy products. So this is a moment to be smarter and more strategic on energy and ensure that oil and gas companies CEOs do not pad their bottom line at the expense of hardworking Americans. If the Senate will pass the clean energy tax credits, including what we need to do on electric vehicles and electrifying buildings, that will replace most of what we were importing from the Russians over time. So it is time to double down on cleaner, cheaper, renewable energy. And let me tell you what a clean energy future looks like for America. It means becoming truly energy independent as we power our homes and businesses with renewable energy produced right here in America. You've heard us all talking about build it in America, make it in America. This needs to happen with clean, abundant, affordable energy. I mean, take the Sunshine State that I represent, the state of Florida. Do you know this? Even though we're called the Sunshine State, we import 75%. We generate electricity by importing frack gas to the Sunshine State. That doesn't make sense, does it? At a time we're facing a climate crisis and we're so tied to these volatile fuel prices, we have got to move to clean solar power and electrify everything with it. It means ensuring families never have to worry about these price spikes at the gas pump again as we expand the reach of electric vehicles and invest in a reliable grid. It means saving families money at home. These electric clean energy fuel sources are cheaper. With electric appliances, energy efficient technologies, and other cost saving solutions, we could really help lower costs for families at a time that they need it. Clean energy will help protect Americans from the soaring gas prices, which are driven by global markets. So instead of doubling down on fossil fuels that folks are really trying to use this moment to exploit right now, instead, it's the time to move to new energy policies and solutions. The United States is blessed with abundant and affordable clean energy. We have a historic opportunity here to use it. And the best way to do that is to electrify everything. Efficient electrification will save Americans and Europeans money in the short term and in the long term. It will weaken the influence of petro dictators like Vladimir Putin, and will drive down the demand that keeps pushing up the volatile price of fossil fuels. It will put money back into the pockets of workers, businesses, local communities as we rapidly deploy cheap renewable energy from solar and wind, and it will help save money on utility bills. You mentioned earlier that the rising cost of climate fueled disasters really shouldn't be left out of the equation as well. So let's move to clean electricity through solar, wind, greater conservation, EVs, switching out to heat pumps. This will create millions of good paying jobs as well. Just think of the gas replacing heat pumps. They're manufactured here in Texas, Georgia, Mississippi. When we're talking about EVs, we've all seen the investments, the massive investments by our American automakers, big new plants coming to Michigan, Tennessee, and Illinois. So, and I have to say, offshore wind components are being new investments in Virginia and in my area in Tampa Bay. So let's get with it. Let's not allow the fossil fuel companies and their allies in Congress to keep us tied to these costly, stale policies of the past. Let's move forward with abundant, American-made, clean energy and help electrify everything. So thanks, and I'm going to throw it now to Timothy Hade.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, everyone. I think one of the reasons that I was asked to speak today is because I'm a military veteran. I've seen what war looks like. And when you've seen what many military veterans have seen and you come home, you realize that despite all of our domestic problems that are very real, on a relative basis, America is a pretty great place. But it also makes you realize how fragile this whole thing is. And we have to protect it. The atrocities committed by Vladimir Putin over the last few weeks have made it very clear to me, and I hope all Americans, that we need to step it up. And so as a clean technology executive, I can't speak to, what we should do in the immediate term to support Ukraine, the Ukrainian people, and stop Russia. Not my area of expertise anymore. But as someone who understands energy systems at a pretty granular level, I can tell you that this drill baby drill rhetoric that I've been hearing a lot lately is absolutely 100% most certainly not the answer. Ramping up oil and gas extraction in the United States will not have any near-term impact on global oil markets. It's just not how it works. And if anyone wants to talk more about that, I'm happy to answer questions. We can go into a lot of detail, but it's complicated and it's not how it works. In the medium and long term, however, the way we take power from petrostate dictators is very clear. We need to transition to a clean energy economy and reduce our dependence on foreign oil. To be clear, even in the absence of strong federal policy support, this transition is already happening. In 2021, as an example, 80% of new capacity additions to the US electric grid were clean energy resources. Across the board, we're making pretty astounding progress decarbonizing electricity, transport, and industrial processes. And this is happening not because of government mandates, but rather because executives and entrepreneurs and investors and the vast majority of the American people understand that clean energy technologies are simply a better way to power the future. But from a national security standpoint, the primary problem is timing. At our current pace, reducing our dependence on fossil fuels is going to take decades, during which time authoritarian thugs like Vladimir Putin will continue to have an outsized global influence that threatens the lives and livelihoods of Americans and our allies and our children. That's why we need to act now. As was mentioned, Congress is currently sitting on a $555 billion piece of legislation to accelerate the transition to a cleaner, more resilient, more secure, and more affordable energy system. If enacted, this legislation would not only quickly and drastically reduce our dependence on foreign oil, it would also save the average American over $500 a year in annual energy costs, create millions of high-paying jobs for Americans, strengthen our supply chains, and ease inflationary pressure. Today, as we watch this horrific situation unfold in Ukraine, passing this legislation has become a moral imperative, and there's no excuse for delay. Thank you very much, and I'll turn it over to Laklesha Lloyd.
Thank you so much for having me here today. Hello, my name is Laklesha Lloyd. I'm a disabled Army veteran from Charleston, West Virginia, and a mother of 2 boys. I come from a military family. My grandfather was a McDowell County resident. For those who do not know where McDowell County is, southern West Virginia in the heart of the coal fields. He served in World War II and worked in the coal mines after service for about 20 plus years. My oldest son is about to be the 4th generation of military service, and he is in the process of joining the military at this moment. And I'm proud to be here today as a climate justice organizer with Common Defense. Common Defense is the nation's largest grassroots veteran organization with 300,000 members. Even though we no longer wear the uniform, we still honor the oath we took to protect the people and the Constitution of the United States. And for us, that means tackling the biggest threats to our communities, our country, and the world. And at this moment, there is no greater danger facing us than those that are posed by climate change. You know, as we all know, Russia has leveraged its role as a major supplier of global oil and gas to fund its invasion of Ukraine. Authoritarians like Putin use fossil fuels as a weapon. As a matter of national security, we need to take that weapon away and transition to a clean economy powered by homegrown renewable energy. Everyday Americans were already struggling from the pandemic and inflation. And now, thanks to Putin's war, we're seeing higher gas prices and higher energy bills. A lot of folks in West Virginia struggled to keep their homes warm this winter. And right now, too many people are having to choose whether to buy groceries or gas. Until we break free of our dependence on fossil fuels, American families are going to keep having their lives turned upside down by instability and price shocks. The transition to clean energy will give our country real independence and security, and will also create opportunity, especially in my home state of West Virginia. Renewable energy infrastructure would be a godsend for jobs, health, and reducing energy bills. And no group would benefit more than our coal miners. Contrary to what many folks think, miners don't like going down into the mines. You know, coal mining is brutal. I myself watched my grandfather suffer from black lung up until his passing. And like so many, when he came home from war, he took the best job he could get, which was coal mining. Miners like my grandfather loved having a good union job that puts food on the table. They feel pride working to help power the country. In a clean transition, we don't have to lose these opportunities. And in fact, many miners are expressing their desire to switch to clean energy jobs. Even the president of the West Virginia UMWA, Cecil Roberts, spoke about the ways the climate provisions of the reconciliation bill would create a pathway for miners to go into clean energy jobs. I quote, "The bill includes language that will provide tax incentives to encourage manufacturers to build facilities in the coal fields that would employ thousands of coal miners who have lost their jobs. We support that and are ready to help supply those plants with trained professional workforce. But now the potential of those jobs is significantly threatened." And it's not just the jobs of coal miners that are being significantly threatened. Until we move forward into the future of clean energy, all Americans will continue to see threats to our health, our livelihoods, and our national security. And that's why we need to pass the climate provisions to shore up our energy security, create the much needed opportunity for our citizens, and create a healthier environment for all. And I thank you for your time, and I will now pass it over to Ari of Rewiring America.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity. I'll just start by saying that we're at a crossroads where our climate and energy policy are converging. And we have a profile and courage on what we must do in President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people, and also in Timothy, Laklesha, and Senator Heinrich and Representative Castor. Because we can either seize this moment to secure our energy freedom, our geopolitical freedom, and our climate freedom, pulling forward our progress on our climate targets by several years, or we can keep doing more of the same, drilling ourselves deeper into petrostate dependence and climate chaos, and going back a decade on our progress to zero emissions. That is time and risk to our security, independence, and planet that we simply do not have. There's no such thing, as others have said, as energy dependence, independence, if we continue relying on oil and gas to power our vehicles, heat our air and water, cook our food, and dry our clothes. And this is simply because fossil fuels are global commodities traded on global markets. Even if you make more of the product here, the price for the product isn't set here. This is not the first time we've had spikes in prices at the pump or on our home heating bills. In fact, if you look at the last 20 years alone, the only thing we have consistently gotten from this dependence is volatility and uncertainty. Just this winter, before Putin invaded Ukraine, Americans were paying as much as 50% more to stay warm in their homes. And if we think doubling down and doing more of the same is going to lead to a different result, well, we know what that's the definition of. But no dictator, cartel, or profiteering company controls Americans or our allies' access to the sun, wind, water, and warmth from the ground itself. Never before have Americans been so aligned in wanting to rid themselves of this dependence. We need to use this moment to wrest control of our energy and climate future. At Rewiring America, we think a lot about how Americans have wanted to help in the fight, but haven't had a way into the battle. We like to think of electrifying our homes one machine at a time as today's victory garden. And as Senator Heinrich mentioned, we have a plan for that. It's called Electrify for Peace. And like any good plan, it has three parts. First, we need to pass the climate provisions of Building a Better America to help Americans purchase these machines: heat pumps, EVs, cooktops, solar, batteries, machines that have plugs and not pipes. To give an example of how climate and energy policy converge, if we electrified the 5.5 million homes that get their heat from oil today, we'd save those families $1,000 a year on their bills and reduce our demand for oil by 71 million barrels, which is about 25% of what we used to import from Russia. Second, we need to invest in manufacturing these machines, particularly the heat pumps, here in America. President Biden talked about increasing America's productive capacity in the State of the Union, controlling our supply chain. Senator Heinrich just talked about this as well, and so did Representative Castor. Making the machines that get us off fossil fuels and help save American families money in heating their homes and water is a supply chain we can and must control. Our allies in Europe need these machines as well. We can scale production now to help them and build a whole market for ourselves along the way. Third, we need to train the workforce to electrify everything. This is a new and resilient economy that can never be automated or offshored. Laklesha was just talking about this in incredibly compelling ways. We can send Americans to Europe right now to learn the trades and help them meet their needs, and seed our workforce here for the future, for generations to come. It is an absurdity that we would allow, as the United States of America, the cost of Americans' drive to work or home heating bills to be dictated by the whims of an evil crackpot thousands of miles away. Since when has that defined the spirit of the most powerful nation in the history of the world? Energy security means crushing fossil fuel demand, plain and simple, by doing all the things we know bring our costs down and create a better future. And we get to keep the planet as a result. It's time for us to seize the opportunity that is right before us and be the bold nation that can lead the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ari, and thank you so much to all of our speakers. Just want to remind everyone that if you have questions, you can either type them in the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom panel, or raise your hand to ask the question yourself. And the first question we have is from Lisa Friedman from the New York Times, and I will feel free to go in and ask your question. Yes.
Great, thanks. Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay, thank you everyone for doing this today. For Chairman Castor and lawmakers on the panel, I think I heard conservation in passing, but can some of you speak to why we're not talking more, why lawmakers are not talking more at this moment about conserving energy, driving less, turning down the thermostat at this moment to let demand meet supply?
Yeah, hi, Lisa. We are, I know back home in Tampa, in my district, I'm talking a whole lot about lowering cost and conservations. I started a series of telephone town hall meetings called Cost Busters, where we're talking about how you lower cost across the board. And we have one coming up on conservation. And clearly we need to be doing more, though. We need to be talking about lowering demand, just as Ari said. If we lower demand, that really saps the power of these petro despots to control our lives.
There's also a substantial amount of investment in Build Back Better, specifically on conservation and efficiency. But we also have to recognize that you can't conserve your way to zero. So switching to these new technologies that are 300% more efficient is really key to reducing demand.
Yeah, and by the way, you can't ignore what we just passed in the omnibus appropriations bill that gave a substantial boost to energy efficiency and conservation through the Department of Energy as well, weatherization included.
Thank you, Lisa, for that question. Next, we have Catherine Morehouse from Politico.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. This question is for Senator Heinrich. One of the biggest agencies that has the potential to increase the amount of clean energy on the power grid is FERC. And under Chairman Glick in particular, the agency has taken on a really big agenda that includes transmission reform and bringing more renewables onto the grid. But Glick's term ends in June, and some are worried that some of the progress that he's made on transmission and other clean energy issues could stall without his leadership. Is this a concern for you at all? And are there conversations happening about whether to reconfirm Glick?
Well, I think Chairman Glick's done an amazing job sort of taking a FERC that was headed oftentimes in the wrong direction and getting it organized to facilitate a modern electric grid and the kind of changes that we're talking about. I think he's been remarkable. At the same time, I think that anyone that the Biden administration nominates, the majority of my colleagues are going to want to see that same skill set. So whether it's Chairman Glick or someone else that the Biden administration nominates in the future, I think the FERC is now taking steps that they'll be impossible to unwind, because this is the direction that the market is going. And once you have structures in place that really facilitate that and speed that, cheaper energy will drive many of those changes.
Great, thank you.
All right, next we have Jeannie Salo.
Hello, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. Hi, Senator. Hello, everybody. I just want to say thank you for hosting this event. We're big fans of the issues that you're raising here at Schneider Electric. We're really proud to see you come together on this day. Obviously, in the aftermath of President Zelensky's speech, it was a moving and powerful speech. What I'd like to ask about is resiliency. And obviously, there's a lot of funding in the Infrastructure Act that is going towards modernizing and upgrading the grid. And you've talked a little bit about that. We are active in microgrids, which of course include renewables. And in fact, we are one of our microgrids is at the Miramar Air Force Base, and we're very proud of that work. It demonstrates, a huge critical space where we need to engage in that way with more renewables and off-grid solutions. And I just wondered what are your thoughts about ensuring that as we build out and modernize that grid, that we ensure that microgrids are a part of that, as well as these other electrification solutions. And if you think there's more that should be done to sort of raise the profile of that aspect with everything that's going on right now. Thank you.
I'll jump in and see if anyone else wants to add to this, but absolutely. And it's actually the Department of Defense that probably got microgrids and their role in resiliency long before many of us did. And because they are a distributed solution, they provide very real resiliency. And in my role on appropriations, we've been trying to accelerate the use of microgrids within the Department of Defense to make sure that our defense installations have the kind of resiliency that we all believe they should have. And we need to apply those same lessons to the grid as a whole.
Yeah, and I will add, Senator and Jeannie, thank you for that question. You know, we are really racking up some clean energy and climate wins here in this Congress, in addition to the bipartisan infrastructure law that kind of supercharges the electric vehicle charging across America and helps us make our electric grid more resilient. Look at the defense bill that was passed on a bipartisan basis. It is the most climate forward, clean energy focused defense bill ever passed in the history of the country. And then when you add on the omnibus appropriations bill, it finally got done last week. Again, significant new investments and dollars to go to clean energy, including a lot of new dollars for Department of Energy to do microgrids and really expand that technology. Now, the missing piece is the climate tax credits that we passed here in the House that are on the plate there in the Senate. And I think with the volatility across the globe and energy prices and this new awakening to the fact we cannot be tied to volatile fossil fuels any longer. We cannot allow despots to call the shots on our economic security and our national security. This makes it more urgent than ever. It was already urgent because we also have a climate crisis, but it is particularly urgent now to make this move and for the Senate to get this across the finish line.
Yes,
Tim,
ma'am.
you look like you want to jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, I just to highlight this, I think one of the reasons that it's so important to pass this $555 billion package is when it comes to distributed energy and microgrid, there's two really important things in that legislation. The first is actually a microgrid investment tax credit that's going to help accelerate the proliferation of microgrid and distributed energy resources across the country. And then the second is a direct pay mechanism for the investment tax credit. One of the things that really holds back distributed energy today is that monetizing investment tax credits, the current way the system works, is a nightmare for small scale projects, and it disproportionately hurts low income families and small businesses. And so having that direct pay mechanism as part of this $555 billion package in and of itself, that's going to drastically accelerate distributed energy and microgrids. And that's one of the reasons it's so important that we get this done.
All right, thank you all. I want to give a reminder that we have about 5 minutes left until the press conference closes. So if you have any last questions, please either type them in the Q&A or raise your hand. If not, we may be able to give you all 5 minutes of your day back. But we have, all right, Grant Gunnison, go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. We've heard a lot about Build Back Better over the past 6 months. Ups and downs, I guess, on the bill, trying to get it passed. What realistically is going to need to happen to get that across the finish line? Is it a coin flip in probability here, or is this going to get done?
I would say I'm more optimistic today than I was 3 to 4 weeks ago. And there is a growing recognition by every single member of the Democratic caucus that these tax credits in particular are absolutely critical for the economy, for buffering consumers from inflation and for continuing our energy progress. So I'm not ready to do a end zone victory dance by any means, but I am optimistic that we're going to get there.
Maybe a follow-up to that is, what do you think the timeline realistically looks like on getting that done?
I don't think it's actually helpful to sort of prognosticate about the timeline, but I will tell you that the discussions and negotiations are more active right now than they've been since things sort of went sideways just before Christmas. So hopefully that bodes well for things happening sooner rather than later.
Okay, well, if there are no more questions, want to thank everyone for coming. And at the end of the day, like Senator Heinrich said, the passing these investments are more urgent than ever for inflation, for energy independence, for national security, and just because so many families desperately need these investments and because of the urgency of the climate crisis. And so we hope that Democratic leaders will continue to feel the pressure to come to the table and make a deal. And we know that we have investment across the agreement across the Democratic caucus for the investment. So just thank you all for coming and for listening to these important perspectives here today. So